called the floating train, and we don't need to explain why. For a large part of the year, according to Channel News Asia, the vehicle passes over a bridge where cows graze underneath. But part of the line that connects from the Thai capital of Bangkok is actually positioned over a reservoir that fills up during these cooler and rainier months. And as the water rises beneath it, passengers are able to see the spectacular illusion that the train they're on is sailing. It makes a stop in the middle of this surreal scene so passengers can snap selfies. And while it attracts locals and tourists from other parts of this region, a lot of people from other countries don't know about it. A blogger who rode these rails over water says the trip is only published in the Thai language. Hi, I'm Carl Azus with The World from A to Z. Welcome to the show. Just like there have been vastly different perspectives on the Middle East conflict itself, there are vastly different perspectives on whether there should be a ceasefire, what would be at least a temporary stop to the fighting in the war. The Secretary General of the United Nations has called for a humanitarian ceasefire so that civilians in Gaza and the things they need to survive can be protected. He's also called for the immediate release of more than 200 hostages that the Hamas militant group took when it attacked Israel on October 7th. Several government officials from Middle Eastern countries have called for an immediate stop to the fighting, as has Pope Francis, the leader of the Catholic Church. The U.S. government, an ally of Israel, has been under intense and conflicting pressure from supporters of the different sides in the war. Analysts say President Joe Biden has been trying to walk a fine line between supporting Israel and its right to defend itself and calling for the protection of and assistance to Palestinian civilians. The Biden administration has asked for what it calls a humanitarian pause in the conflict so aid can be distributed to civilians in Gaza. But American officials have also said a formal ceasefire would give Hamas time to reorganize against Israel. So what do the two warring sides say about this themselves? Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said a ceasefire isn't possible until Hamas releases all of its hostages. And Hamas has indicated it won't do that unless Israel frees its Palestinian prisoners. So when we produced this show, it didn't look like a ceasefire was anywhere on the horizon. All right, taking a moment to see who's watching A to Z. From the old line state of Maryland, we've got Mr. Owen's class online today. Great to have the Lions watching from Walkersville High School. And from the evergreen state of Washington, the Vikings of Lake Stevens are here. Hello to Mr. Heyman's class at Lake Stevens High School. Our shout-out request form at worldatozorg doesn't have a spot to put in another country, but if you're watching from abroad, please make a request under today's show at youtube.com/@theworldfromAtoZ.
'Tis the season of spending, and despite concerns over the economy, the National Retail Federation says consumers are ready to spend big.
NRF is forecasting that total holiday sales during the months of November and December could reach as high as $967 billion.
The holiday shopping season keeps creeping earlier and earlier. This year, it's for a very practical reason.
They want more time to find deals, and they want more time to really spread out that shopping.
With inflation holding steady, NRF Vice President Catherine Collins says holiday shoppers are more price conscious.
Shoppers are saying they will pull back in other areas in order to afford and prioritize their holiday shopping season. They will search for sales and deals and really look for ways to make every dollar count.
And where are they putting those dollars?
Gift cards were the top item that people said they were shopping for this year rather than specific products.
Another big trend this season, beauty and self-care products, thanks in part to influencer culture.
Shoppers are finding influencers and social media to be increasingly important when it comes to hearing about deals, but also discovering new products and things that they didn't know they needed.
As far as deals goes, Kristen McGrath with Retail Me Not says Black Friday shopping is still the best bang for your buck.
We tend to find the most deals and the best deals all concentrated around that one big weekend.
In Los Angeles, I'm Mike Valerio.
On this date in world history. A winter storm known as the White Hurricane struck the Great Lakes on November 7, 1913. But one characteristic that made it so bad was that it didn't stop then. The blizzard lasted 4 days and brought hurricane-force winds and 35-foot waves to the Great Lakes. It sank or stranded dozens of ships and killed about 250 people. On this date in 1944, incumbent U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt defeated New York Governor Thomas E. Dewey in a presidential election. What made that more significant was that it would start FDR's 4th term as president, something that hadn't happened before and hasn't happened since. Term limits were set in 1951 with the ratification of the 22nd Amendment. And speaking of elections, the one on November 7th, 2000 was noteworthy because it wasn't immediately clear who'd won the vote. Initial results from Florida favored Republican candidate George W. Bush over Democratic candidate Al Gore, but they were so close they triggered a recount in the state. It wasn't until that December, when the U.S. Supreme Court ended a major legal battle, that Bush was confirmed as the nation's president-elect.
A word of knowledge. Which of these items set an auction record in 2020 when it sold for $6 million? Guitar, wristwatch, pickup truck, moonstone. A Martin D 810E acoustic guitar used in the 1990s by the late Nirvana frontman Kurt Cobain sold for $6,010,000.
Millions of guitars are sold every year in America. They generate billions of dollars in sales. And while the acoustic instrument dates back to the 15th or 16th century, the first electric guitar patented in America was the Rickenbacker frying pan in 1937. Since that time, dozens of companies have been manufacturing solid-body electric guitars, and one of the best-known brands carries the name of an American inventor who didn't even play guitar.
It was the guitar of choice for rock stars like Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton, and the history of the Fender guitar is as rich as the sound waves coming from this amp. It all started in the 1930s when Leo Fender opened a radio repair shop in Southern California. Musicians would come to the shop asking him to amplify their stringed instruments. Playing in bigger venues made it harder for them to just rely on the natural amplification from hollowed out wood. By the mid-1940s, his work was in such high demand that he launched a manufacturing company and started experimenting with a solid body guitar that had a pickup. A pickup is an electrical output that brings sound through an amplifier. Fender himself was a musician, an avid saxophone player, but he never really picked up playing the guitar, not even the instruments he created.
Leo Fender was not a guitar player, but he was a fantastic listener. And by having an audio company, he had musicians that would hang out in his store, and he just felt like he could build a more stable, more robust instrument.
Fender's original models might have looked more rudimentary than others at the time, but he was focused on how well they functioned.
You know, he always said, if I have $100 to make something, I'll spend $99 making it work and $1 making it pretty.
Almost 80 years later, a factory stands in place of the original shop, and the methods used to make these electric guitars live on. A pretty simple recipe: a detachable neck, solid wood body, and some nice smooth curves.
The vintage guitar is so heavily collected, and everybody wants to emulate that, so we're basically building a brand new guitar with tag that it looks like it's 50 years old, 60 years old.
They say one person's trash is another's treasure, or is it one person's botched job is another's collector's item? A sheet of these stamps was printed incorrectly by mistake back in 1918. The airplane is upside down. It's known as the inverted Jenny, the Jenny being the biplane, and it's become one of the most famous mistakes in stamp history. Now, one of these stamps in near mint condition is going up for auction in New York, and it's expected to bring in up to $2 million. Maybe sometimes it does pay to make a mistake. Of course, it's plain to see. It's there flatly or philately. It's put its stamp on history, collector stamped victory. No mystery at this time why the Jenny flipped while flying. It's an airmill error posted with the utmost care, with airfare at $2 million. Let's say millionaire. And if you've capital to spare, just spill it where they say to post your pennies and bid high so you can fly high and fly home, inverted Jenny. That's the world from A to Z with me. I'm Carl Azus, and it means the world to me to have you watching.